Blank is the Democrat starting to emerge as the 2028 frontrunner.
I know it's not Gretchen Whitmer because I think you only get to humiliate yourself like that, like once and get a pass. And she did it, and it's April 2025. So, girl, it'd be like a long 3.5 years for you to make it to a nominating stage. Yeah. Who do you think it is?
Well, I personally think that it is Governor Josh Shapiro. For one dark reason, and then many other perfectly normal reasons, but one dark reason is that he suffered a really heinous attack that appears to be anti-Semitic in nature. We're still getting information about it, but it occurred after his family had a Passover dinner that evening. And so I think that he's so far handled it in a really great way. He said, I'm not going to be intimidated by this kind of violence. He has bipartisan support behind him. But also the stuff that he's been doing in Pennsylvania is kind of in line with the conversation that's going on in the Democratic Party. We were talking about it earlier. You called it the abundance liberalism, right?
It's like Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson's book that's all about like the pro
all the rage right now. And Josh Shapiro has sort of been practicing that school of thought in Pennsylvania for a while, right?
Yeah.
He's focused on permitting reform, tax cuts, making it easier for businesses to operate in Pennsylvania. The idea behind abundance liberalism is just that the government should get out of the way for more government, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like the red tape of the bureaucracy should be lessened so that the government can do more stuff and allow more stuff.
When that highway collapsed, it was, I forget which interstate it was, but the estimates were like, oh, it's going to take us 5 years to rebuild it. And Josh Shapiro was like, no, we're not doing the environmental reviews. We're just going to rebuild it because that is quite literally what the government's job is if you're going to pay taxes.
And so I think because the other side, the sort of, you could put them into two buckets. You have like resistance liberals and abundance liberals. Right now, there's a bunch of other avenues they could take, but these are the only ascendant ones right now. I think the abundance liberalism wins out in the end because it's a proactive message that isn't explicitly tied around Trump, because Trump can't run again. He's done after this. And so I think that once Trump is off the stage, Democrats are going to have an even harder time because they've sort of rendered their party all the way around Trump. It's defined by its hatred of Trump. And so the Shapiro approach, I think the abundance liberalism approach, offers a sustainable way forward, unlike the sort of resistance liberals right now. And so I think that Shapiro, being the most visible advocate of that, with the most successful track record, he's best positioned to be the frontrunner of the Democratic Party.
So lots of points I agree with you. Also, to look just specifically at like the difference between Shapiro and Whitmer, right? Whitmer went to the White House to kind of secretly praise Trump on the tariffs because she is solely a protectionist, right? She cares about the unions, that's it. Compare that to Josh Shapiro, who's also a, blue collar Midwest state. He comes out and says tariffs are indeed just a tax that are going to hurt the shipyards, that are going to hurt domestic manufacturing. Let's focus instead on the pro-growth element of that. And it's because I'm saying all this that I think he's not the future of the Democratic Party. Because I like him way too much for, I think, him to have any viability.
Oh, if you like him, then the median Democrat voter is not going to be into it.
Exactly. And it's like, Democrats are Republicans, I think, especially under Trump, we have been a lot better. I'm saying we, like I had any say over it, but like building the backbench because no one was ever Trump isn't really scared of anyone outshining him, right? Like he can get like annoyed with people, but everyone always knew you're just playing second fiddle to Trump.
Yeah, he was never at risk of being outshined.
Whereas Democrats have done a terrible job building out a backbench, right? This was an Obama-era problem. It's part of the reason why Joe Biden just became a default nominee in 2020. And Kamala Harris, we now know, as all these recriminations and backstabbing books come out, she specifically didn't want to choose Josh Shapiro because she's like, this guy is like too ambitious and wants to do too much in the job, which is what a vice president should want to do, right? Like you want someone, I don't know how similar Josh Shapiro and J.D. Vance are in many ways, but like I think they're both very smart guys that take their governing agenda seriously. I mean, I still think it's AOC. Look, so Bernie Sanders is coronating her. It's a long national process of coronating her as his successor. He's not delusional enough to think that he can, do this forever. He's bringing her all around the country for their, anti-oligarchy campaign. She has a couple fundamentals going for her. One, she's very good at this. AOC, we've seen her really refine her talents to go from, think about, the initial rollout of the Green New Deal and how disastrous that was, to she totally triangulated the mess that was that summer of 2024 for Dems. She did it really well. she was loyal to Biden. She never backstabbed him. And then when Harris was, nominated, she fell below. But she did not come out ahead. She did not tick off anyone needlessly. She clearly is very charismatic, very good looking. That is an asset. Gives a good speech, and she's unapologetically beholden to the activist class. She is unapologetically someone that would, I think pretty clearly, her and Bernie have both said, we are willing to sacrifice the agenda of abundance in favor of the revenge of redistribution. It's why both there is a grand irony. While they were giving their anti-oligarchy tour, how much of all the billionaires that were at Trump's inauguration, like the combined net losses, were literally in like the hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe even like up to like $500 billion that these billionaires all. Like, I cannot think of a worse time for the quote-unquote oligarchs. And yet, they stick to, the same tried and true, like, Bolshevik revolution rhetoric because they're true believers, right? They don't care about the tariffs harming 401ks. Doesn't matter if 2/3 of Americans are in the stock market. In their mind, it's, we resist. We resist Trump and we resist the billionaires. And when Trump's gone, you're going to need another foil, and that foil will just be the billionaires.
See, I think the problem with that is that is not new rhetoric. Like, that has been the Democratic Party message. Prior to Trump, that was their primary message.
Yeah.
It was redistributive, and it was a sort of class warfare thing. And eventually, voters sort of got tired of it because that rhetoric isn't aligned with their perception of the Democratic Party, which is a party that defends the establishment and the status quo and is comprised of billionaires. I mean, most wealthy, educated people in this country are Democrats at this point. So I think the rhetoric is sort of out of touch with reality when it comes to Democrats, and voters have seen through that. I also worry if AOC has appeal beyond just the base, right? And so that a base election, the way that the country has, been realigned politically by Trump, a base election for Democrats is no longer sufficient to win them the presidency, particularly because of the way their electorate is distributed. It's concentrated on the coast in states they're going to win no matter what, so they can run up the score in those states. Yeah. But if they don't broaden that appeal, I think the Electoral College, the blue wall, all of that actually becomes a higher and higher burden for them to retake power. I wonder how she would expand her appeal. And then the last thing I'll say is that there are so many clips from the past of her saying like batty left-wing stuff. Yeah. And the clips that haunted Kamala Harris, there's a big reason why she lost. She could not pivot to the middle. Yeah. Because she was on tape saying crazy stuff. And I think AOC is going to have the video clip problem if she ever tries to run nationally.
And I think the biggest determiner of who's going to be right here will be how much democracy do Democrats actually want this time around? Because we've basically, so 2020 was admittedly like an open process. 2016 was not, and 2024 was not. You had two elections where Democrats, it was basically a top-down decision. Was 2020
open though? I don't know, because it was they kind of threw it all behind Joe Biden before South Carolina. So you could even make an argument extended to that.
And I don't think it's a coincidence that like the less Democratic the primary, the worse the party fares. Because like it is good to have a rigorous primary where you expose a lot of your candidates' weaknesses. And then it also kind of, immunizes them from that criticism later on because I've already dealt with this. I've already talked about this.
Right. And it also lets them actually get a sense of where the electorate is at. They miss the vibe shifts if they're coming up with the candidate in a conference room here in D.C. and they're not going out to Iowa and New Hampshire and actually hearing what voters want this cycle.
Yeah. So if it's like a more open primary, I would hold a lot more hope for Josh Shapiro to make it. I don't think AOC would be a good national, general election figure.
So you're hoping they go ahead and pick her. Go ahead, get in that conference room and pick AOC.
Well, look, you know what? I'd rather have a 50% risk of President Josh Shapiro versus the Republican than a 30% risk of President
your numbers brain working.
Eva Perón. Yes, that is. I think the House always wins in the end, so I don't want to rig it. I don't want to rig it in favor of the House.
You heard it here first, folks. If AOC becomes president, it's because Tiana manifested it today.
Oh, no.